From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day, this is Dateline Malacañang, and here are the news. Malacañang assured the public that government efforts to address the impact of the Middle East crisis would continue despite fewer meetings of the Unified Package for Livelihoods, Industry, Food and Transport or UPLIFT Committee. In a press briefing, Palace Press Officer Attorney Claire Castro said UPLIFT meetings would now be held every 2 weeks, with the next meeting scheduled on May 19. Asked why the number of meetings had been scaled back, Castro said Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. observed that cabinet secretaries and concerned agencies continue to work even without weekly meetings.
Nakikita po kasi ng Pangulo na kahit hindi mag-meeting every week ngayon, ay nakikita po na tuloy-tuloy pa rin po ang pagtatrabaho ng ating mga cabinet secretaries at ang ibang ahensya patungkol po dito para maibsan ang epekto ng krisis sa Middle East. So, tuloy-tuloy pa rin po. Kahit hindi po nagmi-meeting na every week, tuloy-tuloy pa rin po ang pagtatrabaho.
Said a proposed uplift bill may also be included in the agenda of the next Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council or LEDAC, also scheduled on May 19. The uplift committee, chaired by the president, leads the government's response to the ongoing energy emergency triggered by geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. It is tasked to stabilize food prices, support key sectors like farmers and transport workers, and protect consumers through targeted subsidies and interventions. The government is also pushing for the urgent passage of the uplift bill to enhance the utilization of public funds and support vulnerable sectors amid global volatility and geopolitical tensions. Meanwhile, the Office of the Executive Secretary, OES, said in a statement that the government is further strengthening the implementation of the uplift program to support the transportation sector and ensure food security amid the ongoing energy emergency. In preparation for the upcoming meeting, Executive Secretary Ralph Recto met with select cabinet members to coordinate efforts to accelerate and streamline the government's response efforts. Among the key measures discussed was the expansion of the fuel subsidy program to help sustain public transportation operations nationwide. Under the program, jeepneys and UV Express units are entitled to a 10 pesos per liter fuel discount, while more than 2,000 gas stations nationwide are participating in the subsidy initiative for public utility vehicles. The government is also expanding fuel assistance coverage to buses and daily trucks, particularly those transporting agricultural products and other essential goods, to help stabilize supply chains and mitigate rising transport costs. The OES said government agencies are intensifying efforts to ensure that assistance reaches intended beneficiaries, adding that support interventions for farmers and fisherfolk are being strengthened to ensure adequate and sufficient supply for Filipino farmers.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang emphasized the importance of fairness and due process in the impeachment procedure or proceedings against Vice President Sara Duterte, stating that the government will not meddle in Senate deliberations. Following Senator Alan Peter Cayetano's election as new Senator leader, or rather Senate leader, Palace Press Officer Attorney Claire Castro said that the administration respects legislative freedom.
Well, everything that happens in the Senate it is within their power. It is within the authority to decide on all matters within the Senate. So, hindi po panghihimasukan ng Pangulo yung anuman po ang magiging desisyon ng Senado.
Cayetano took over the Senate presidency on Monday afternoon after Senator Vicente Soto III was removed. Just as the House of Representatives voted to impeach Duterte for the second year in a row, accusing her of culpable violations of the Constitution, graft and corruption, betrayal of public trust, bribery, and other high crimes. Castro believes members in the House made their judgment based on data and papers offered to them. She highlighted that the Senate is now responsible for deciding if and how the impeachment process would proceed.
Ating pagkakaalam, ang pinakahuling tala ng botohan na para ma-impeach ang Vice Presidente ay 257. Okay? Nagdesisyon po ang House of Representatives at nakita malamang nila ang mga ebidensya, sabi nga nila ay mas dumami pa ang sumang-ayon na ma-impeach sa pangalawang pagkakataon ang Vice Presidente. At ito marahil ay ayon sa mga nakita nila na mga documents or mga ebidensya na maaaring maging dahilan para ma-impeach ang Vice Presidente. At sana kapag ito ay napunta na rin sa Senado ay maging patas ang mga manghuhusga, ang mga senador natin, para ito naman ay sa taong bayan. So, nagsalita na po ang House of Representatives at ito po naman ay kanilang trabaho at hindi po ito sinasaklawan ng Pangulo. Trabaho po ito ng Senado. So, hindi po manghihimasok ang Pangulo. Nasa Senado na po yan, nasa kamay na po yan ng Senado. At kung ano man po ang gagawin nila dyan, kung ito po ay papabor para sa taong bayan o papabor lang sa isang tao, bahala na po ang taong bayan na humusga para sa kanila.
Meanwhile, the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, or CBCP, requested that the Senate assemble as an impeachment court and begin Duterte's trial immediately. Archbishop Gilbert Carcera, president of the CBCP, said that Senate members should proceed with the impeachment proceedings without delay. On Monday, the House of Representatives voted 257 to 25 with 9 abstentions to impeach the country's second highest official. The 4 articles of impeachment accuse the Vice President of misusing or abusing confidential funds, possessing unexplained wealth, bribery, graft, and corruption, and threatening to assassinate President or Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., First Lady Liza Marcos, and Leyte 1st District Representative Martin Romualdez.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang said the Senate's protective custody over Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa has legal limitations, noting that Philippines' laws would govern any action in connection with the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant issued against him. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro, a lawyer, said Republic Act 9851, or the Philippine Act on Crimes Against International Humanitarian Law, Genocide, and Other Crimes Against Humanity, governs the matter despite the Philippines' withdrawal from the ICC. In a Palace Press briefing, Castro noted that under Section 17 of RA 9851, the Philippines may defer to an international tribunal already conducting an investigation.
Ang nagsampa po kasi ng kaso sa ICC ay kapwa natin Pilipino. At mayroon din po tayong obligasyon sa Interpol, mayroon din po tayong obligasyon na ang lahat ng dapat na managot ay managot. Dahil dapat din po natin proteksyonan yung mga di umano na nabiktima ng EJK. At ayon sa RA 9851 at maliwanag to sa Section 17, na kung meron na pong nakapagsimula na state or international tribunal patungkol sa pag-iimbestiga, ay pwede nating i-defer. Pwede nating i-waive yung ating karapatan at ibigay na sa international court ang pagpapaimbestiga. At yun lamang din po ang sinusunod ng RA natin dito sa RA 9851.
Said the Department of Justice had earlier said that there are only 2 options under the law, either surrender or extradition. She added that the Supreme Court circular on extradition applies only to requests from a state and not from the ICC. Asked how authorities could enforce a warrant if the Senate grants De La Rosa a protective custody, Castro said senators' privileges are not absolute.
Meron po tinatawag na privilege para hindi po hulihin ang sinumang senador habang nasa session kapag siya po ay nasa vicinity ng Senado. But alam po natin na ito ay may limitasyon. Kapag ka po ang isang krimen na nagawa ay may penalty na more than 6 years, hindi po mag-a-apply itong pribilehiyo na ito.
In regards to concern that the Senate could be used as a sanctuary for De La Rosa, Castro said lawmakers should know the limits of their authority, telling them that they should not go beyond the law. Castro also stressed that the Philippines has obligations to Interpol to ensure accountability. Pressed further about De La Rosa's appeal for protection from President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., Castro said all parties, including alleged extrajudicial killing victims and accused persons, are entitled to protection under the law. Castro, however, emphasized that President Marcos has consistently directed law enforcement agencies to follow the law. She added that if De La Rosa is arrested, his rights as an accused would be respected. De La Rosa, named by the ICC as an indirect co-perpetrator in former President Rodrigo Duterte's drug war, returned to work on Monday after hiding for several months. Castro called on Duterte and De La Rosa supporters to respect lawful process and not sow violence.
Maski naman po yung mga EJK victims ay humihingi rin po ng proteksyon sa gobyerno. So, ang akusadong katulad ni Senator Bato ay humingi ng proteksyon. Lahat naman po ay bibigyan ng proteksyon na naaayon sa batas. Ang lagi naman pong utos ng Pangulo sa lahat ng enforcement agencies, sa lahat po ng pagkakataon, hindi lamang po dito patungkol kay Senator Bato, dapat lamang ay sumunod kung ano ang sinasabi ng batas. Hindi po kinakailangang magkagulo. Alamin lamang ang batas, sumunod sa batas, at hindi kinakailangang gamitin ang puwersa. Hindi kailangang gamitin ang mga harassment na nagagaling sa iba't ibang kampo.
Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
In related news, the Philippine Air Force, or PAF, denied claims that a civilian aircraft is on standby at the Villamor Air Base in Pasay City waiting for the possible transport of Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa to The Hague, Netherlands. PAF spokesperson Colonel Maria Cristina Basco at a press briefing at the Camp Aguinaldo in Quezon City said there is nothing unusual going on at the air base. Meanwhile, Armed Forces of the Philippines spokesperson Colonel Francel Margaret Padilla said the AFP is leaving it up to the police to maintain peace and order amid protests from the camp of De La Rosa and former President Rodrigo Duterte. Earlier, the International Criminal Court, or ICC, confirmed on Monday that the warrant of arrest against De La Rosa, which circulated in the media, is indeed a formal ICC document. The ICC unsealed and formally classified the document as public on May 11. ICC spokesperson Orion Mallet, in a text message to reporters, said the arrest warrant against Mr. Ronald Bato de la Rosa was issued confidentially under seal by Pre-Trial Chamber 1 of the ICC on November 6, 2025.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang reiterated that Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is not now considering rejoining the International Criminal Court, or ICC. However, the administration does not rule out future negotiations about prospective membership in the Rome Statute. Claire Castro, Palace press officer, said that the president's current position remains unaltered, albeit the topic may be investigated further in the future.
Sa ngayon po ay hindi po ang huli naming pag-uusap ng Pangulo. Medyo matagal-tagal na po. Sa ngayon ay hindi ko pa po ito muling na itatanong. Ang huli niya pong sinabi ay hindi pa po magre-rejoin. So kung kinakailangan po sigurong aralin sa mga susunod ng araw, ay hindi naman po sarado ang Pangulo dyan. But sa ngayon, ang huli naming pag-uusap ay hindi pa po magre-rejoin.
International Criminal Court's preliminary review of his administration's anti-illegal narcotics campaign, the Philippines formally withdrew from the Rome Statute in 2019. The matter emerged amid increased debate over whether to implement an ICC arrest order against Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa, who led the Philippine National Police during Duterte's drug war. Castro said that while the Philippines no longer accepts the ICC's authority as a member state, the government continues to function under Republic Act 9851, also known as the Philippine Act on Crimes Against International Humanitarian Law, Genocide, and Other Crimes Against Humanity. She said that the law offers channels for surrender or extradition in connection to international tribunals. Castro said that President Marcos's standing command to law enforcement authorities is to follow existing laws. When asked about worries that the Senate's designation of protective custody over De La Rosa may impede the implementation of any arrest warrant, Castro said that parliamentary privilege has limitations. She noted that the government has obligations not only under domestic law, but also to suspected victims of extrajudicial killings.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang urged the public to remain vigilant and discerning amid rumors of destabilization plot against Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. Speaking to reporters, Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said authorities have not monitored any active destabilization efforts against the Marcos administration. However, Castro said the public is aware of who the sources of such narratives are and who will benefit from such a plot to topple the government. Castro urged Filipinos to remain cautious and critical of misinformation and disinformation circulating on social media. Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro said no destabilization efforts are being monitored within the ranks of the armed forces of the Philippines amid a potential impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte. Teodoro stressed that the military remains professional and focused on its constitutional duties despite political tensions.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news, the planned Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN Maritime Center, which will be set up in the Philippines, will allow members of the bloc to integrate their efforts for defense and security, the Armed Forces of the Philippines said. AFP spokesperson for the WPS Navy Reservist Rear Admiral Roy Vincent Trinidad at the media briefing at Camp Aguinaldo in Quezon City said the ASEAN Maritime Center could also be used by member states for coordination in non-traditional crimes, border issues, law enforcement, and information sharing. The intended establishment of the ASEAN Maritime Center in the Philippines came with the adoption of the ASEAN Leaders' Declaration on Maritime Cooperation. This declaration reaffirmed the ASEAN's collective commitment to deepen maritime cooperation and recognized the multidimensional nature of maritime issues, including navigation safety, maritime security, and regional coordination.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP, said around 35 Chinese naval and Coast Guard vessels were monitored in 4 key West Philippine Sea or WPS features from May 4 to May 11. At a press briefing at Camp Aguinaldo, Quezon City, AFP spokesperson for the WPS Navy Reservist Rear Admiral Roy Vincent Trinidad said the Chinese ships composed of 20 CCG and 15 planned vessels were spotted off Ayungin Shoal, Bajo de Masinloc, Escoda Shoal, and Pag-asa Island. The CADC is the military strategic shift where the AFP is tasked to defend all Philippine territories, including the country's 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. Trinidad said the AFP will keep securing Philippine sovereignty and sovereign rights by performing patrols by sea and by air in the WPS. During the Balikatan exercises, which took place from April 20 to May 8 in Luzon and parts of the Visayas and Mindanao, Chinese forces from the planned CCG and even its maritime militia did not conduct any coercive and aggressive actions, the spokesperson said.
Dateline Malacañang.
Fuel surcharge in May 16 to 31 is down 3 notches, or from level 18 to level 15, the Civil Aeronautics Board or CAB announced. Depending on the distance, level 15 fuel surcharge for domestic routes may range from 491 pesos to 1,436 pesos, while fuel surcharge for international flights could be between 1,621 pesos to 12,056 pesos. Under the current level, fuel surcharge for domestic flights ranges from 593 pesos to 1,734 pesos and between 1,958.44 pesos to 14,561.87 pesos for international flights, depending on the distance. Fuel surcharge is the extra fee that airlines may collect in addition to the base fare to cover the costs incurred from oil price volatility. CAB has been implementing the 15-day price monitoring and implementation cycle for fuel surcharge imposition to mitigate the impact of fuel price surge on air travel costs. The interim measure shall be in effect until the current situation stabilizes or as may be revised or revoked accordingly. In an advisory posted on CAB's website, it said airlines intending to impose or collect fuel surcharges must file their application on or before the effectivity period. The applicable conversion rate for May 16 to May 31 is 61 pesos 0.18 to the US dollar.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, for Dateline Malacañang, the Department of Agriculture, or DA, announced the temporary import ban of live animals and animal products from Greece following confirmed cases of foot and mouth disease, or FMD, in European country. The DA issued Department Circular Number 20 after Greece reported FMD cases in domestic sheep in Lesvos on April 6. In a statement, DA Secretary Francisco Chu Laurel Jr. said he issued the order to safeguard the country's livestock sector in line with the directive of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. for the agency to stay vigilant in preventing the entry and spread of transboundary animal diseases. The circular suspended the issuance of sanitary and phytosanitary import clearances for affected commodities and directs strict inspection at all ports of entry. Products such as skeletal muscle meat, live swine, bovines, and untreated milk are not allowed entry, while certain processed goods deemed safe commodities under international standards may still be permitted under strict conditions. Shipments already in transit before the circular's effectivity may enter the country provided these were produced or slaughtered on or before February 28 and comply with established guidelines. Non-compliant shipments will be confiscated or dealt with in accordance with existing regulations. Chu Laurel underscored the urgency and importance of the measure in safeguarding the domestic agriculture sector, ensuring food safety and protecting public health. The DA assured stakeholders that the restriction will be reviewed regularly based on global disease developments.
Dateline Malacañang.
And that is all for today's Dateline Malacañang for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. This has been Bea Gaza-de Guzman.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.